But what happens when you stress a mitochondria? First, how do you stress a mitochondria? A tough workout, that longer walk. You can actually get exposure to smog, pollution, sunlight, airplane ride. You get EMF exposure, a tough email, actually a tough conversation with a loved one. Like basically, if you're alive in this modern era, you have stressed mitochondria.
What if one of the most promising compounds for longevity and energy wasn't some synthetic superdrug, but a molecule originally studied for rocket tech? In this episode, Chris Burres from MyVitalC breaks down what ESS60 actually is, how it works in the body, and what it could mean for your daily performance, recovery, and health span, minus the hype, plus the science. Let's dig in. Good afternoon, Chris. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me today.
Joe, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited. Things I love to do. I love to geek out about the science and then share that science with lots of people. So I'm looking forward to this.
Awesome, man. Me too. I'm here to learn. So starting where the beginning, like total newbies, like what is ESS60 and what's sort of like the elevator pitch maybe for someone who's never heard of this?
Yeah, so if the quick elevator pitch would be, it's a molecule, and we believe what the molecule is doing in your system is reducing the negative impact of stressed mitochondria. Right? So that's like the hot button, great mitochondria, powerhouse of every cell. It's in every cell in your body except for blood cells. They have 0, and your brain and neurons actually have like 2 million compared to the typical 50 to 5,000 and your other cells. So if you're reducing the negative impact of stress mitochondria, then you're going to have positive testimonials. You're going to have systemic improvements, and that's in fact what our testimonials are. And then now we can go like, well, what is it? So the ESS60 molecule, I'm holding up a model for those of you listening on a podcast. Imagine a soccer ball where the lines on the soccer ball represent the bonds between the carbon atoms. So you have a spherical molecule of 60 carbon atoms. This molecule was discovered in 1985 at Rice University. That's here in Houston where our lab is based. And the 3 scientists who discovered it actually won the Nobel Prize in 1996 for that discovery. So a short 11 years from discovery to being awarded the Nobel Prize. I'm really proud. My business partner and I actually started selling research quantities of this material to research institutions around the world in 1991, a full 5 years before they were awarded the Nobel Prize. Like, I don't like to brag, but I think it's possible, and this is fair, to say that because we were delivering commercial quantities of carbon nanomaterials to research institutions around the world, the scientists actually knew the value of the material, and that might be some of the reason that they ultimately were awarded the Nobel Prize. And I'll talk a little bit about the Nobel Prize. Something spectacular about this ESS60 molecule. It's a soccer ball shaped, right? And the volume in the middle of it is big enough for any atom on the periodic chart to fit inside of it. So there's actually a new symbol in chemistry because of this molecule. And I think that's how you know you're going to win a Nobel Prize, when they like add a new symbol to the language of chemistry. So if you think lanthanum, La, at this molecule, that means that lanthanum is physically trapped inside of the molecule. So not covalently bonded to the exterior, not ionically bonded to the exterior, but physically trapped inside of it. And this molecule is pretty fantastic. There's actually a book called The Most Beautiful Molecule, because it's a beautiful structure. The structure is the same as the geodesic dome. If you think about going to the Epcot Center, that big dome is a geodesic dome. And the way I describe the molecule in terms of, kind of not health related, is that the molecule performs as well or better than the current best material in almost every application. So it makes better inks, better batteries, better tires, better photocells. And this is often where people get nervous. They're like, wait a minute, isn't this a health podcast? Aren't we talking about hacking our health? I can pretty much promise no one in your audience looked out at their car and thought about, I wonder what components of my car battery I should be taking on a daily basis for my health, right? Certainly not. You got biohackers in the audience. Maybe there's one out there.
I've heard of the antifreeze and ice cream theory that's been going around, but yeah.
Yeah. So this is where people get nervous, and then the story actually will make you a little bit more nervous. On the exterior of this ESS60 soccer ball shaped molecule, There are 20 effectively benzene rings. Now, benzene is ubiquitous in our society, and we don't have modern society without the benzene ring. If you kind of glance around wherever you're at and imagine everything that's plastic gone, because the foundational molecule is the benzene ring. Many medications are made from the benzene ring, including aspirin, a lot of detergents. So we don't have modern society without it, and it's everywhere. But we know that when benzene is on its own, so just that ring of 6 carbon atoms, really with 6 hydrogen atoms on the exterior of those, it's known to be toxic and known to be carcinogenic. And because there are 20 of those on the exterior of this ESS60 cage, scientists thought this molecule is probably going to be toxic. It's probably going to be carcinogenic. And because of the fantastic material properties, they thought man is going to be working with this. We need to understand if it's toxic and carcinogenic. So they put it in a toxicity study. In that study, there were 3 groups of Wistar rats. That's the test animals that they used. One group was given water, so that's the control group. One group was given olive oil, that's a semi-control group. And the other group was given olive oil with the ESS60 molecule in it, as much of the ESS60 molecule as they could dissolve. Instead of being toxic, the test subjects that received the ESS60 molecule in olive oil, really the MyVitalC formula, lived 90% longer than the control group. So that's the single longest longevity experimental result on mammals in history. It's peer-reviewed published research, the kind of research you would hang your hat on. And I'm very proud to say that our lab provided the material, and our lab is mentioned in that original publication. And I'll just share our most consistent testimonial is people take the product in the morning, they report mental focus and energy during the day, and then better sleep that night. And that's kind of the early genesis of the story. You may have some questions, so I'll turn it back over to you.
No, of course. I think a lot of people, we hear free radicals, oxidative stress. People kind of just tune it out, though. I think we've heard it so much, or we're just kind of getting inundated, but most people don't really understand what that means. Do you mind explaining why these matter when it comes to aging and energy?
Yeah, actually, that's a great kind of lead-in question. I'm going to drag it out a little bit because the story is kind of interesting and involves this crazy, wacky group of people called biohackers. So we'll drag that out, and then I'll get back to antioxidants. So that study came out in mid-2000, and mid-2000, we started getting phone calls from this crazy, wacky group of people called biohackers. By the way, it's an affectionate term, crazy, wacky people, because I am now a biohacker. And they were like asking, hey, I read this rat study. How much of this stuff should I be consuming on a daily basis? And my business partner and I, you've got to imagine I like to describe us as happy-go-lucky carbon nanomaterial scientists. And we've got our carbon nanomaterial scientist hats on. And what we hear these biohackers ask us is, hey, Chris, that stuff that you sell to research institutions around the world to put into inks, batteries, tires, and photocells, how much of that stuff should I be consuming? And just like your car battery, Robert and I were like, I think you should consume 0 of this. So we added not for human consumption to our labeling in mid-2013. So think about that. From 1991 all the way to 2013, we didn't have to have not for human consumption on our labeling. We finally added then. Now, just to be clear, the literature was clear that this molecule is safe. As long as you process it properly, this molecule is safe. But we were conservative nanomaterial scientists. We kind of didn't want to get in the supplement industry. I'll talk a little bit about that. And so we added not for human consumption to the labeling. And even all the way until about 2017, when we kind of shifted our mindset, we were getting 2 to 3 phone calls per week. And these were crazy, wacky phone calls. Hey, Chris, my knee pain is gone. And we were like, you mean the knee pain of your rat? Because it literally says not for human consumption on the labeling. And they're like, yeah. Hey, if my rat weighs 275 pounds and does HIIT training on Tuesdays and Thursdays, should they increase their serving on Tuesdays and Thursdays, right? So we kind of know what's going on. My business partner and I are getting together every quarter, actually literally in the conference room that's right behind me, and going, do we want to get into the supplement industry? And it's very different. It's a different industry than delivering commercial quantities of carbon nanomaterials to research institutions around the world. And then the supplement, the standards are just very, very different. And so every quarter we got together and like, no, we don't want to get into this industry. And like I said, that really changed at the latter part of 2017. But before we hit that point, Probably in around 2014, 2015, I found a research paper that said that 50% of the supplements that are on the market. So this research group bought some supplements on the market, tested them, and their published paper was 50% of the supplements they purchased didn't have in them what they say they had in them, right?
Yeah.
This is a very different, I think it's generous to say that the supplement industry is challenged, right?
100%. Yeah. Yeah. Everywhere you go online, just be careful.
Exactly, right? And so again, quarter after quarter, we're not getting into this industry. Finally, at the latter part of 2017, a guy with a big YouTube following started talking about all the benefits he was getting taking it on a daily basis. And our phone went from these, those crazy wacky phone calls 2 to 3 times a week to 10 phone calls a day. So at that quarterly meeting, we have a different perspective. This is an entrepreneurial opportunity bigger than we realized. And we looked back at that paper and we thought, hey, 50% of the supplements on the market don't have in them what they say they have in them. This is going to happen to this industry. We're in a unique position. We're the oldest and longest manufacturer and distributor of the molecule on the planet. We know how to make it to exacting standards, to scientific standards, and people are going to come in and they're just going to do the wrong thing. So we really decided to get into the industry. And we asked ourselves 2 kind of last questions. The first one was a moral question. Are we comfortable selling this? So I take it, my wife takes it, everybody on our team here takes it. By the way, that's not a requirement to work here. You can work here and not take it. But they have access to the research, and probably more importantly, they have access to the testimonials that the customers are giving us on a regular basis, and so everyone here takes it. And then the next is kind of the legal perspective. You've got the FDA and the FTC. You got to cross the T's and dot the I's, and so we do that. And in 2018, we started bringing this product to market. So now my role changed, right? I was a chief scientist of a carbon nanomaterial manufacturing business. Now I'm still that, but I'm also a chief scientist of a supplement business. And so I stepped in, and my first thing was, what is actually driving the benefits that people are experiencing? How might these rats have lived 90% longer? And one place that I landed was, what does the medical community think about aging? And they don't all agree with this, but a lot of them believe that aging is an oxidation and an inflammation process. And so I'm in Texas, we like to put big old check marks on things. In terms of oxidation, there's an ad hoc study on the web showing us to be 172 times more powerful than vitamin C. And then there's peer-reviewed published research showing us to be 125 times more powerful than vitamin C. So we got that big old check mark there. When it comes to inflammation, you've got to be really careful because the FDA has guidelines, and the FDA sees discussions about inflammation as discussions about the diseases of inflammation, which are also the diseases of aging, which includes Alzheimer's, arthritis, cardiovascular disease, cancer. So if I say we address inflammation, the FDA hears me claiming we cure cancer, we cure arthritis, we cure cardiovascular disease. Obviously, we're not making that claim. There is so much really expensive research that would need to be done to prove that and to be able to say that. What the FDA will allow us to say is that we address inflammation at least as it relates to exercise-induced inflammation. So we've all had a tough workout, or maybe just walked farther than we normally do and woken up that next day and felt that sense of inflammation in our body. And so the FDA allows us to address that. Now, I'm gonna sit here on inflammation because that's not a big old check mark, right? Because we've got some FDA restrictions. It's a little old check mark, but there's some important things that we're doing. One, we're a very strange supplement company. We continue to do research. We continue to publish. That's a very weird thing in this space. Most supplement companies don't do research, and even fewer publish. We actually published in May of last year with the original researcher who did the original research where the rats lived 90% longer, so Dr. Fatih Musa out of the University of Paris. So very proud to be doing that. We're currently in the middle of an ad hoc study on HSCRP. So HSCRP stands for high sensitivity C-reactive protein, and this is an inflammatory marker. So when you're inflamed, you have elevated numbers for HSCRP. And the reason we're doing this ad hoc study is because we had a Dr. Young came up to us at the A4M Longevity Fest. So we had a booth there. A4M stands for Anti-Aging Association. I think it's close to that, if it's not exactly that. And their event Longevity Fest. So Dr. Young came up to us. We had a conversation at Dave Asprey's biohacking conference previously. And he said what I'm about to say. And when he said it, I was like, Dr. Young, I have to record this. So I actually have a recording of him saying this, so I'm doing a pretty good job of quoting him because I've seen that video a couple of times. He said, Chris, I don't care if you're male, female, pre-surgery, post-surgery, cardiovascular disease, or otherwise healthy. Your product reduces elevated HSCRP, and his example was 9, into normal ranges, so brought it down to 0.9 and 4 to 8 weeks. Additionally, we're seeing improvements of HRV, so heart rate variability, and sleep, anywhere from 20 to 60%. And he actually goes on to say, we just believe this is a product that should be available in the break room for our employees, right? Like, that's how powerful. So we're off and running doing this HSCRP study. I'm gonna stop here for a second, because when he said 9, I didn't really understand what a high number that was, how impactful that might be. And I had a conversation with an oncologist later who said, listen, if you have an HSCRP of 9, we assume you have cancer until we prove otherwise. And Dr. Young's protocols wasn't able to bring it down off of 9, so we brought it down from 9 to 0.9 and 4 to 8 weeks. You can see why we're doing this particular study. So we're really excited about that. And it's now, I feel like we can kind of, right within, we got to be careful of the guidelines of the FDA. We'll put a big old check mark next to inflammation. And I can share, at some point, I can share some of the studies that I've done related to my own inflammation, but I mean, not studies, tests. But I want to turn it back over to you because I've covered a whole bunch of stuff.
No, this is fascinating. I was actually curious, for people listening, how does this actually work in the body, right? Are we talking more energy, better sleep? You mentioned sleep. You mentioned obviously inflammation. Is it different for everyone? What can someone expect when taking this supplement?
Here's what we think is happening, and then I'll talk about the theory behind it. And I think it started off with, we believe we're reducing the negative impact of stressed mitochondria, right? So this is actually according to our BOSS theory, which stands for Buffering Oxidative Stress System. The way this works out, so we know from peer-reviewed published research that this ESS60 soccer ball-shaped molecule gets into the mitochondria. We also know from way back in the 90s when it was discovered that it can hold up to 6 negatively charged particles on the exterior of the cage. So here's how that manifests. Again, mitochondria, powerhouse of every cell. There's between 50 and 5,000 mitochondria in every cell in your body, except for blood cells, which have 0, and then brain and neurons, which have 2 million. Like every power source we're familiar with, there is a negative byproduct. So you think about your car, back to the car, your car going down the road, it has exhaust. You think about a power plant, it's got a smokestack with smoke coming out of it. In the case of mitochondria, it's producing reactive oxygen species. Now, the way I picture reactive oxygen species, they're like little bumper cars where everything they slam into, they rust, they cause oxidative stress, oxidative damage, ultimately inflammation, right? So inflammation and that aging process, the medical community has kind of come up with inflammation because it's so tied to aging. So internal to the mitochondria, you've got 2 antioxidants to manage those reactive oxygen species, and those are glutathione and melatonin. I'd like to pause here for just one sec because melatonin is the sleep hormone, and one of our most consistent testimonial is related to sleep, and so that has some nice parallels. So though that glutathione and melatonin manage those reactive oxygen species so they're not running around doing any damage. But what happens when you stress a mitochondria? First, how do you stress a mitochondria? A tough workout, that longer walk. You can actually get exposure to smog, pollution, sunlight, airplane ride. You get EMF exposure, a tough email, actually a tough conversation with a loved one. Like basically, if you're alive, and not all day, but from time to time. And when they get stressed, they produce more reactive oxygen species, and that's when they run around like little bumper cars and do damage. And that's when we believe this ESS60 molecule steps in. It can actually hold up to 6 of these negatively charged reactive oxygen species so that they don't do any damage. And then when your mitochondria can replenish the glutathione and replenish the melatonin, then they can manage them appropriately. So I have a fun, I know that's a lot of science, I have a fun analogy. And I do think that all biological analogies should start with Mardi Gras. I mean, a lot of biology happens at Mardi Gras, so why not? It's the end of Mardi Gras. And you've got these reactive oxygen species running around on Bourbon Street, slamming into cars, rusting, oxidative stress, oxidative damage, inflammaging. And you have the New Orleans Police Department. The glutathione and the melatonin come onto Bourbon Street, handcuff themselves to those reactive oxygen species, and get them off of Bourbon Street. But what does the New Orleans Police Department do when they're overwhelmed? They take those reactive oxygen species, they put them in a paddy wagon. They attach them to the ESS60 molecule so they can't do any damage. And then when the New Orleans Police Department can replenish the glutathione, replenish the melatonin, then they can handcuff themselves to those reactive oxygen species and get them off of Bourbon Street. And that's why we say the ESS60 molecule is the boss a buffering oxidative stress system. And the whole kind of long and short, again, is reducing the negative impact of stressed mitochondria in your body.
Okay. So for someone listening, when they look at supplements maybe aimed at vitality, anti-aging, whatever it might be, we talked about conferences we've both been to. What sort of sets yours apart? So for people who can understand, obviously you're giving great backstory and analogies, but to someone else who might say, okay, I'm interested in trying this. How's it different from supplement X that I'm already taking?
Well, one of the things that we like to brag about, a lot of supplements out there will brag that they operate at the cellular level, right? And they should, because there's some supplements that just stay in your intestines and do a good job. Activated charcoal would be one of those as a kind of detoxifying agent. But a lot of them will brag about operating at the cellular level. We like to brag that we're operating at the subcellular level, at the level of the mitochondria, right? So there are some supplements that target different aspects of physiology. When you're targeting the mitochondria, then you're actually having head-to-toe improvements. And I'll share that with you. Before I do, let me go ahead and throw out my FDA disclaimer, right? The FDA has not evaluated our product. It is not intended to treat, diagnose, cure, or prevent any disease. And as I share anecdotes, it's always best, because this is new, it's best just assume this is not going to happen for you. If you dig into the research and you want, we'll actually give you a link at the end if you want to try this product. So head-to-toe testimonials. We've got people sharing that hair is growing back. It's growing back original color. It's actually growing in places. And this is from the oral product, right? It's growing in places that it hasn't grown in some time. So that's head. The toe one is kind of interesting because we have this influencer that we've worked with who, when he was 5 years old, a crab bit his big toe and split his big toenail at 5 years of age. In his career, he was a Navy SEAL, still with a split toenail. When he was 65, so after being on our product for a short period of time, his toenail finally healed. So at an age when you're not supposed to be healing, right, like you're healing slower in general, his toenail finally healed. So we literally have head-to-toe testimonials. And if you go back, again, that was one of my roles as the chief scientist. What's driving these head-to-toe testimonials? Like, what works like this? And again, if you're reducing the negative impact of stressed mitochondria, then yeah, you're going to have systemic and head-to-toe testimonials, which we actually do have.
Well, and you yourself, you said you took it, right? You said you might be able to share some personal, how it affect maybe what you noticed personally, maybe what surprised you most about taking it.
Yeah, I think the thing that surprised me the most. So one, sleep, absolutely positive impact. I got a better testimonial than mine. One thing that absolutely surprised me was related to migraines. So I am the geeky scientist that you see in front of you. I have a spreadsheet that goes back to 2014 tracking my migraines because they're horrible. Like, they're a horrible experience. I was trying to figure out what might be causing them. Was there a food? Was there too much exercise? Whatever. Never did figure that out. But I would get about 4 or 5 migraines per year until 2018. So the year I started taking this product on a regular basis, I didn't get a single migraine. It was actually right at about 17 months. I went off the product for 10 days to join our sleep study, because we actually have a small sleep study that we completed. Just real quick, in that study, 100% of the participants reported improvements in sleep when they were on our product, right? So a fantastic result. It is a small study. I'll be forthcoming. It's only 10 people have gone through that. We're working to get more through that. Actually, I've got meetings today to keep that moving forward. So yeah, that's my migraines. I actually will get 1 or 2 per year. What they look like now, though, is vastly different. Migraines are typically something you've got to go into your room, cover your head, turn the lights off, make sure there's no noise, all that. And I certainly was at that level. Now I'll actually get an aura, right? So it's like a little tiny sliver of kaleidoscope that will move from the side of my eye into the center of vision. But it doesn't hurt. I can actually work through it. It's hard to read, right? Because a kaleidoscope, imagine reading with a kaleidoscope. That's not an effective reading method. So it's hard to read in the middle of this, but I certainly could record a podcast or something. And in the past, just like tapping on my head would give me a pretty significant pain, like I could feel that pain for days. And that just doesn't happen anymore. You couple this with my wife. So my wife used to get 9 migraines per month, and I know the number 9 because she had a medication that they would only give her 9 per month, and she would use them all, and then the remaining migraines she just had to suffer through, and she was getting about 13 migraines per month. Really rough. It took me a while to get my wife to take your spouse, your significant other, what do you know about supplements? It turns out more than I realized. And so I finally got her to take it. And she went from that 13 really per month to like 1 to 2 every month or every other month. So we've seen a dramatic impact. Again, assume this won't happen for you. If you're interested, there'll be a link at the end. So that's migraines. I think the best sleep is, my business coach describes it this way. He says, for 50 years, I needed an alarm clock to wake up. As soon as I started taking MyVitalC, I wake up before the alarm clock. And he's a business coach, right? So he's out, he's got some late nights, he's out drinking wine, schmoozing, networking, whatever. And none of that really seems to matter. When he's on the product, he wakes up before the alarm clock. And about 10 days off the product is when he starts to need the alarm clock again, like clockwork, pun intended. So those are kind of the sleep related. Now, in terms of inflammation and me, this is kind of an interesting story, right? So at the event we were both at, Health Optimization Summit, next to me was a ESR piece of test equipment. That stands for erythrocyte sedimentation rate. I think it also goes by an SED rate, right? What this is basically you take a drop of blood, you put it in a capillary tube, you hold it vertically, right? So it's exposed to gravity. And the rate at which the blood cells separate from the plasma is an indication of your inflammatory status. So I took this test. Turns out I was one of his best salespeople because this is a great piece of equipment. You should, after they talked to us, was like, you should go talk to Bob. And so he gave me a free test. He had an biological age component. That biological had me at 20 plus years younger than my chronological age. Then you go on to glycan age. So glycan age is a biological age test, looking at glycans. These are sugar molecules and how they attach to different cells in your blood. And, it tends to have one direction. Like you look, as you get older, it doesn't, it looks bad. And it's a huge inflammatory indication. Also, that particular study had me at age 21. I think I took that when I was 53 or 54. So it had me at age 21, which I kind of joked, do you even want to be younger than 21 biologically? Like, is that, can you still drink? So again, a really good indication of inflammatory status, but a specific marker, right? So that's really important. And then the last test that I'll share, which is, I don't like the result, I like the direction, right? So when I was 51, I took my DN age and it had me at 59. And I was like, well, I'm doing a lot of things here. Like, how am I, 8 years older than my biological age or chronological age? And so I wasn't happy with that. But 3 years later, I took the test again and it had me at 58. So literally, I was aging negative 1/3 of a year each year for 3 years. And then it had me 3 years later, it had me 1 year younger. So I certainly like the direction of that. And I would attribute a lot of that to the impact that the ESS60 molecule has. Ultimately, we believe on the mitochondria.
Is it more health span that we're trying to improve, lifespan, or both?
I think it's both, right? Here's the reality. These test subjects lived 90% longer than the control group. And actually, I'll stop here for a second because there's one other aspect of the study that I think is really good. So a typical Wistar rat lives 32 months and has a known amount of tumor mass in its body. The longer it lives, the more tumor mass it has in its body. Even though the MyVitalC rats lived out to 62 months, none of them had any tumors. Now, I've told that story to some people and like, cure for cancer. And my response is no. And then I follow that with another no. There's a big difference between dealing with a cancer that has metastasized and potentially being a cancer preventative. I mean, we know things as simple as good sleep, good nutrition, good exercise are cancer preventatives. That piece of the study supports the fact that it's probably a good cancer preventative. Now, I will share this one other study, which is fantastic. It is a Petri dish study, which I consider to be the lowest level of study, but it is fascinating. So you take a Petri dish and you have cancer cells and healthy cells in that Petri dish, and you introduce an anti-cancer agent. Now, an anti-cancer agent is a poison, and the goal is to poison the cancer cells before the healthy cells. In the presence of the ESS60 molecule, there is increased efficacy of the anti-cancer agent against the cancer cells. So more cancer cells die than when not in the presence of the ESS60 molecule. And there's protective effects for the healthy cells. So more healthy cells live than when not exposed to the ESS60 molecule. And why might that be the case? Well, we understand that cancer cells, their mitochondria function on a different energy source. And we believe that's what's going on, that this molecule supports the mitochondrial function in healthy cells and doesn't necessarily support the mitochondria in cancer cells. Now, are we looking for longevity or a longer health span? It wouldn't make much sense. It wouldn't make much sense if you have these rats living almost twice as long and they showed no health benefits, right? Like if they just were decrepit for half of their life now because it's 90% longer. And I kind of joke, there is no notation in the original study where these rats were walking around with little rat walkers and little rat oxygen tanks, right? Like they lived healthy rat lives.
They were doing HIIT workouts, right?
They were, right, exactly. Well, when you're a 275-pound rat doing HIIT training on Tuesdays and Thursdays, you stay pretty fit. It just wouldn't make sense. And then you think about it, and Wistar rats are actually prone to these tumors, and clearly there were some tumor protective effects, at least in this study result, and that might be what was driving their extension of life. When we think about I'll share this testimonial because it's kind of interesting. So I try very hard not to work on Saturdays and Sundays. My wife usually does a good job of making sure that happens. But one Sunday, I think it was a Sunday, one Sunday I was here and somebody knocked on the door, and we're not, a retail location. And so I kind of opened the door. It felt very clandestine. It was like, do you have any ESS60? I was like, yes, I do. Come in. And so he comes in. I have to figure out like how to even process his credit card, which is basically go on the website and make a purchase for him. And then I sell him. So I remember this guy. About 3 months later, I was walking past the lobby and I saw him, and Cassandra, the person helping him, said, this is his third purchase, and we happened at the time to be running some sort of 3-bottle special, and he was purchasing 3 bottles. And I was like, this guy's going to give an amazing testimonial, right? Like, so, hey man, like, what have you noticed? And he felt all bad. He's like, Chris, I got to share with you, I haven't really noticed anything. And I was like, in my head, I'm like, well, there is the longevity study. There's, reason to continue taking this if you don't notice anything. And then he gestured towards his knuckles, and he's like, does it help with this, right? To kind of use your imagination. We're like, yeah, we have a lot of testimonials kind of related to this challenge. And he goes, well, it certainly has helped there. And I used to have this click, click, click in my knee, and it's gone. And at that point, I was like, it's a shame you haven't noticed anything. And then he goes, and I actually started running again. I hadn't run for like 3 years. I'm about to go on my like 5th jog tomorrow or later today. I can't remember which. And again, I'm like, I'm glad you didn't, it was weird, you didn't notice anything. And he said finally this, which is, I think, important when you think about focus and energy and you actually think about kind of emotional balance, right? Remember, there's 2 million mitochondria in every brain cell. So when you're reducing the negative impact of stress mitochondria, you should have a disproportionate impact on the brain because there's more mitochondria in each brain cell, significantly more. So I said, Chris, I have to share, I'm feeling less stress at work. Now, I also have to be clear, it's the same job, it's the same people, it's the same stress. I'm just feeling less stressed. And that was, finally I'm like, it's a shame he didn't notice anything.
That's hilarious. So looking at your customer base, would there be any, we're talking about biohackers and maybe longevity nerds, with like busy parents, obviously this professional, I'm assuming he was a professional. Maybe he's just tired, stressed out at work, whatever it might be. Does it sort of run the gamut in terms of maybe demographics of client base, or does it lean more towards people in sort of the health and wellness space, the personal that are into it for themselves, that are kind of, geeks like we were saying earlier?
Yeah, well, certainly the geeks like it, right? And I'll be honest, we just got a testimonial last week. This lady was like, hey, I canceled my subscription at 3 weeks. We actually offer a good discount on subscription, so most people start there. She canceled her subscription at 3 weeks because she was like, I didn't really notice anything. And then when she stopped, she was like, oh my God, like now I feel it. And she said a bunch of things kind of physically that I can't share, right, because of the FDA. And then she was like, I will take this product forever. We just recently switched over to Shopify. So that's been a fun challenge. So much fun. And that's caused me to go back in and look at all these subscriptions that are continuing to process. There was one guy had 113 purchases from us. Now, really, he's been buying for 4 years. He has like 3 subscriptions per month. We've got people with 53 subscriptions. People just stay on the product for eternity. I'll share this one. This is really interesting. So there's a guy, Kyle Zagrodzky. I think that's right, Kyle Zagrodzky. He's the CEO of OsteoStrong, which is a franchise. It's at least across the United States. I think it's global. I think they have some international locations. And what they do is they actually help people build bone density. So OsteoStrong, they're addressing osteoporosis, osteopenia. And so he's in the health. I share all that because he's in the health space. His son brought home 2 young pups. One was a runt and in serious bad shape, and the other one was the original one that he wanted to bring home. And the way he described it is like the dog was constantly dizzy, so running in circles, it was shaking so bad it could barely eat. And he took it to a vet, had some water on its brain. I sent him a care package like 3 days after he got the pup. They started giving him 2 to 3 doses per day. And by the time he gave me the testimonial, he was like, the dog's like 80% better. The veterinarian is like, this is basically a miracle. That was never going to happen. I thought we were going to have to put the dog down. And what Kyle shared with me is, I will never not take your product, right? And so it can be subtle, right? That first testimonial was like, I didn't notice anything at 3 weeks. But the reality is often when people get off of the product, then in fact, I probably could go into the data and like, oh, look, after 2 months, half the people cancel, and then they realize, and then they get back on, and now they've purchased like 53 months in a row.
Right. Well, how about going the other way? Are there people that should not take MyVitalC?
That's a great question. We haven't identified anybody. In fact, I just got a testimonial today. I can't remember. I think he doesn't sleep well on the product or so. Oh, felt weakness while working out. And so I haven't even responded to him yet. I'm like, literally, that's the opposite of what we get all the time. Now, the reality is everybody's an N of 1. And right, so I believe the guy. I believe that he's experiencing weakness. But like, that's I don't know, 1 out of 1,000, 1 out of 10,000 that really come in with something strong. We do get 2 to 5% that are like, hey, I haven't noticed anything. And then they go off the product and they realize, just like my business coach, right? About 10 days after he's off the product, he needs the alarm clock. He's like, I should buy this stuff again. So that's more typical. I think another question to ask, well, let me share this. This is kind of a fun story. So there's a guy, Anthony Kunkel, good friend of mine. He loves our product. He's a 2-time U.S. ultra running champion. So he won a U.S. championship at 50 miles and at 50K, which is 62 miles. This guy's a beast. Loves our product. And the way he shares about the product is, I don't think that this product is helping me increasing my exercise recovery time. I actually believe it's preventing damage in the first place. And the reason he says that is because on the last 5 miles of a 50-mile run, by the way, a phrase you don't hear very often, probably I will only ever hear it from Anthony, where strength and stability used to be a problem, now they're no longer a problem. And if you think about, again, reducing that negative impact of stressed mitochondria, that makes sense. And I've got one more analogy that I think it really sits with Anthony. So stress is actually good for us, right? If we got rid of all stress, we just become like little blobs of amoeba-like stuff, and like it's not good. There's a reason we work out. There's a reason stress is good. If you have doubts about that, Think about astronauts who go into space, and when they come back from space, their bone density has decreased. Their immune system is compromised. They're in really bad shape, right? So I like to picture us kind of physiologically like a prairie. And you've got the beautiful prairie flowers and prairie grasses, and you have the right amount of stress, the right amount of rain coming down on it. So that gentle rain is the right amount of stress to optimize that prairie. But what happens if you're like Anthony Kunkel and you have this deep, dark cloud of stress that's pouring into the middle of that prairie, this stream of water? Well, it's going to impinge on the middle of the prairie. It's going to basically start to drill a hole. And that's where we picture this ESS60 molecule. I like to picture it like a sponge that you put between that deep, dark cloud and the prairie, and it sucks up that stress, right? Now, it's important to note, if you don't get rid of the deep, dark cloud, right, if Anthony just kept running for months and never stopped, then eventually the sponge is going to overfill and it's going to start impinging on the prairie again. But in his case, eventually he goes back, he starts doing his biohacking optimization, red light therapy, all the things. And I kind of picture this sponge getting squeezed gently over the prairie. And so now he hasn't experienced the damage that would have occurred if that sponge wasn't available.
Okay, that makes sense. Have you had maybe testimonials or your own friends and colleagues where it actually helps using other devices like red light therapy?
So red light there, again, we believe we're operating at the boss theory says we're operating at the level of the mitochondria. Methylene blue is supposed to support mitochondrial function. Red light therapy is also supposed to support mitochondrial function. So we kind of think of potentially the trifecta of mitochondrial support to be methylene blue, red light therapy, and the ESS60 molecule.
Okay, so if someone's listening and they say, okay, I want to try it. Where do you start with someone? You know, the dose, timing, is it based on their weight, their height, all that kind of good stuff?
So a typical serving is 1 teaspoon or 5 mils, and it's basically a high quality extra virgin olive oil with as much of the ESS60 molecule as we can get to dissolve in it. And I'll go ahead and give the link now because there's things that I'll talk about what might happen when they land there. So we made a link for your audience, right? So they can go to myvitalc.com/hacked2health. I love the name, by the way, hacked2health. When they land there, there's actually a $15 off coupon. You got to go to that page to get that coupon. We have olive oil, avocado oil, and MCT oil when you go there. People ask, which one should I take? We always recommend the olive oil for 2 reasons. First, we're a science-based organization, and almost all of the research is on olive oil and the ESS60 molecule. So that's the first reason. The next is you get a higher concentration of the ESS60 molecule in olive oil. You get about 0.8 milligrams per milliliter in olive oil, about 0.0 avocado oil, and about 0.0 MCT oil. So go for the avocado oil. We also have an inside out. We actually have a skincare product. You'll see that right at the top of the products. So that's frankly is our most popular product. We offer a 25% discount if you go on subscription. So even if you just want to try it once, take advantage of that. Our customer service team has 1,000 5-star reviews on Google. They are not trained to talk you out of canceling your subscription. They're there to help you, and they do an amazing job. But most people, as I've mentioned, most people stay on it. And then I do have a charity piece that I'm really proud of. So I have a book, Live Longer and Better. And so your journey to living longer and better has never been more achievable than today. And you can buy the book on Amazon for $20, or if you get it on the website. Now, it's not on that link. So go to myvitalc.com/hacked2health, get your coupon code, go to the menu structure, find the book. The book's also $20 on our website. For $10 extra, I'll autograph the book for you. And 100% of that $10 fee goes to Operation Underground Railroad. You may remember a movie called The Sound of Freedom, which is an amazing movie about a horrible topic, child sex trafficking, which should be off of our planet yesterday. They're doing an amazing job. So 100% of the signature fee goes to Operation Underground Railroad. And there's one more thing. We got a freebie on that page. Again, myvitalc.com/hacked2health. I interviewed 55 experts in longevity for my longevity summit, and I came up with 18 biohacking tips. And so you can get that PDF for free. You just need to give your email, and you can find that again at myvitalc.com/hacked2health.
Wow, that's awesome. So like walking away, what's one thing you hope listeners would take listening to you? Maybe those are skeptical, overwhelmed by just getting bombarded with longevity and what to trust and what to take and how to take it.
Man, I wish it was really easy to kind of go into the space and find the great products and find the companies that you can trust. You actually do need to do some legwork. When I interviewed the Dr. Tom O'Brien, he wrote the book
Oh yeah,
Autoimmune Fix.
yep.
Yeah, he's amazing, right?
Yeah.
One of the things he says in his book is that if you're, this doesn't apply to Joe and I because this is what we do, but if you're just in the industry, you really not in the industry, you should spend at least an hour per week digging into your health, being the CEO of your health. And maybe that's things as simple as get plants into your house, right? To absorb some of the toxins that are floating around your house. Get rid of the plastic utensils, get rid of the Teflon pans, like sitting down and doing this. Now, I know Joe and I, if we only did 1 hour per week, something's wrong or something's really right because we're on vacation and we're doing it right. But I really do think you have to spend the time to dig in. And really you're trying to understand the science behind it. Is it a company that's out there doing research? Are they continuing to publish that research? And, dig in and try and understand the people that you think have good products and then try them and be analytical about how you try them, right? Like we actually provide a tracker with every one of our products that kind of keeps an idea. It helps you to track what you might be looking at. Hey, sleep, longevity, exercise, like how is it impacting those things? And you can keep a 1 to 5 score so that you keep track of this over the time that you're trying it. Because you really do want to be analytical. You don't need to be as analytical as Anthony Kunkel. I mean, that guy is an amazing biohacker. He's got diaries. He knows he was worried our product was a crutch. So he cycled off the product. He got back on the product. It's not a crutch. He takes it. But you do really need to focus and try things out. And we talked about being at the Health Optimization Summit. I want to encourage people to get to an event. And hopefully there's one near you, right? You don't have to spend an arm and a leg. Dave Asprey's event is pretty expensive. It's a very good event, but it's a pretty expensive event. But if you're on some sort of health journey, it really is valuable to have, and the data is clear, to have a tribe that you're doing this with, right? To have a group of people. And often if you're making changes, the people in your immediate family, your people in your immediate surroundings aren't necessarily making those changes. And so you need to find this tribe of people that can support you, that can guide you. And so I would encourage you to go to some event and look for those people that you can connect with because there's a lot of value in it.
Yeah, that's great advice. And how about connecting with you specifically? Are you active on any kind of social or?
Yeah. So I do have a podcast. It's called Live Beyond the Norms. And then on social media, we're constantly publishing great content, great biohacking tips, great health advice. You can find me at MyVital. So it's at MyVitalC. So Instagram.com/MyVitalC. And then we're the same on TikTok. So I think you have to put the @ symbol, MyVitalC. But find us, please subscribe and please follow. Really appreciate that. There's great content and I would love any feedback anybody has on whatever I shared today or even, what we're sharing on that Instagram platform.
Yeah, clearly you take the customer feedback at utmost importance. So that's something very rare out there. So that's awesome to hear because a lot of times you just never know who's behind the scenes, and you're very, very forthcoming, breaking down personal through the thousands of testimonials and tracking these people like you have a relationship with them and you're always looking to improve. So that's refreshing, I should say. So thank you for sharing that. And it's been great to talk with you today. So myvitalc.com and /hack to health would be a way to get some discounts on products and then just learn more about the company and how you could try it out. And again, thanks for your time today, Chris, and great to meet you.
Joe, thank you so much. Some great questions. I'm happy to spend time with you.